Last year, these players in fantasy football may have taken an L, but in 2025, they are going to bounce back. Today, we're going to bring you 12 different players at each position and give you the case as to why they can be some of the biggest bounce back players in 2025 fantasy football. So what we have done is we have each selected a player at all four positions, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions, and we are going to make the case as to why we think they can bounce back in 2025. And Cameron, CJ Stroud did have a pretty abysmal 2024 season. Make the case why he can bounce back in 2025.
Yeah, before I do, I apologize to our audio listeners, but I got to name it up front. We did not talk to each other. This happened by accident with our shirts. We understand they're very close, but not quite the same. We've already laughed about it, so you can comment about it, but we are aware. I just want to name that out front.
I need to go watch the YouTube
Yes.
so you can laugh that we're all wearing this moss green color today.
I don't know. It's not even like a normal color. It's like kind of like an off. It's one of those days. But yeah, CJ Stroud, you want to talk about a sophomore slump. He had a sophomore slump. And I will let us all three pat ourselves on the back because we did say last year, do not draft him at ADP because it's going to be ridiculous. We did not think that he was going to be 29th in points per game out of all quarterbacks that played at least 7 games last year. Although when you look at the stats, it's not that drastically bad, right? It was 3,700 yards, 20 passing touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So it's not like we're talking about, he was completing 50% of passes like Anthony Richardson or, was throwing an insane amount of interceptions. It was just the fact that he doesn't have the rushing upside. So when you have low touchdown numbers, low yardage numbers, right, it's going to look like there just is such a low floor. But again, he didn't lose at all. You factor that in with the fact that bad offensive line, I understand, not going to get a lot better. We've talked about that, at length a little bit this year, this offseason so far that, it might be marginally better, but it's not going to be great. But I think the bigger thing for him was Mixon missed 3 weeks. Nico Collins missed multiple weeks. Stephon Diggs missed the back half of the year. Tank Dell got hurt again. Dell, Diggs, and Nico only played 5 weeks together the entire season, right? So he just never had his wide receiver core. Obviously, they invested heavily in that in this draft, taking Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, bringing in Christian Kirk as well. You add in Nick Chubb to that backfield to hopefully, keep Joe Mixon from really fading down the stretch the way he did. And then moving from Bobby Slowick, where they were about 12th in pass attempts last year, to Nick Caley, who hopefully is going to open up the field a little bit more 11 personnel. Might not be able to do it because they might need to leave a tight end in just to help with that offensive line. But I just think the talent of CJ Stroud is too good for what we saw last year. And what we saw last year isn't enough to scare me off and think he's actually just kind of a one-hit wonder.
So one of the angles you can also look at in terms of CJ Stroud being a bounce back is that they cleaned house on the offensive line, but it's kind of the only way is up here because I don't think it can be understated how bad that offensive line was last year and how that impacted CJ Stroud. If you just look at the sack numbers alone, Caleb Williams' sack numbers were just egregious last year, 68 of them. But CJ Stroud was in second with 52. He took 52 sacks last year. So I think if the offensive line improves marginally, I think a fresh perspective here from Nick Caley as well, coming over from the Rams, could really help CJ Stroud out as well. I think you nailed that point. Ty, anything else that you would want to add here in terms of how CJ Stroud could be a bounce back this year?
The offensive line wasn't good last year. And we've said in previous episodes, you're going to hear a lot of bad to average talk this year for a lot of these bounce back teams. If Houston's offensive line is anywhere near average compared to last year, CJ Stroud should have more success. You're going to have a much more efficient run game. It's all going to work more cohesively. And that's ultimately what's going to be the selling point for me is if Houston can just get back to average and what they weren't doing well last year, CJ Stroud is going to find success.
Cam, question for you before we can put a bow on CJ Stroud here. The off-season shoulder stuff, how much of a concern is that for you? It's got me a little bit shaken. I know it's only June 23rd when we're recording this, but I'm a little bit nervous.
At this point, I'm not. If it is something that we're still talking about in like late July, August, then yes, I think it is time to take a note of that. Just because, I mean, we've seen stuff linger into the offseason for, players before. So definitely something that you could watch. But especially now in drafts with him being at quarterback 20, it is kind of like, even if it is something going into the season, you're not getting killed in your draft by taking him. But yeah, as of right now, not too worried, but definitely, if we're here in the beginning, first week of August, that's where the alarm should start kind of going.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryans has downplayed it. CJ Stroud has downplayed it as well. I mean, it's a shoulder muscle injury. It seems like it's a minor shoulder muscle injury is what it's been described as. So, yeah, I have my reservations as of June 23rd, but again, if it's early August and CJ's back to full drills at camp and they got him full speed, then I think you could see his ADP start to climb, from quarterback 20 right now as a potential bounce back player this year. Before we dive into the next slate of quarterbacks, though, before we dive on into this next slate of quarterbacks, we know you're already prepping for your fantasy football drafts this upcoming season, and this is the place you're going to want to be. So hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest episodes are up. We love fantasy football just as much as you all do. We want to beat each other and our friends just as much as you all do as well. So we're hoping to have some fun, build some camaraderie along the way, while giving you all of our thoughts and insights on the upcoming season, which players you should and should not be drafting. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well. Hang out with us this summer, have some fun, win a little bit of fantasy football along the way as well. Ty, I'm curious to hear your case on Brock Purdy being a bounce back player this year, when he was a quarterback 12 in fantasy points per game last year, finished as a quarterback 14 overall, and is currently being drafted as a quarterback 11.
The bounce back is being a top 6 to 9 quarterback overall and in points per game.
Okay.
That's the bounce back. That's what we got in 2023. And maybe you can make the argument that top 6 is like out of reach, and then that like 6, 7, 8 is like the ultimate ceiling. But if 2023 is kind of average, or what we are expecting the San Francisco offense to produce at, then I'm kind of in on a bounce back for Brock Purdy. And when you look at other quarterbacks going around him, like Brock Purdy seems to be the most intriguing option because of that upside. The offense in 2023 for San Francisco, they were first in EPA per play and EPA per pass. They were third in EPA per rush. They were first in success rate. And again, Brock Purdy was, the quarterback 6 that year. And in 2024, with all the injuries that they had, 9th in EPA per play and EPA per pass, 12th in EPA per rush, and 11th in success rate, which I just need to say, you're top 12 in all those advanced metrics with the chaos that you had on that offense. Like, okay, I'm going to give Kyle Shanahan some flowers on that. But Purdy finished, like you said, as a quarterback 14. And the only reason why he was able to stay productive in fantasy, despite everything, was because he had 5 rushing touchdowns. And he had only combined for 3 in his first 2 years. And by the way, 5 rushing touchdowns was more than Lamar Jackson. That was more than Bo Nix, who had almost 30 more rushing attempts than he did. So I just don't think we're going to see 5 rushing touchdowns again. So if we're going to get regression there, how are we going to bounce back then? And it's going to be with passing production. In 2023, Purdy had 4,300 yards and had 3,900 last year, had 31 passing touchdowns in 23 and only had 20 this past year. So if this offense is fully healthy, this team is going to bounce back in a big way, especially with the schedule that they have this year. And the equation is pretty simple. If San Francisco plays well, Purdy does well in fantasy. So at the quarterback 11, yeah, there's a slight discount for a guy that can potentially bounce back into that, like I said, that top 6 to 9 quarterbacks in fantasy football.
The other angle you have to look at this from is this defense is just not going to be as good this year. I mean, they lost a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball where, if Kyle Shanahan wants to run the crap out of the football, like there might be some game scenarios now where he just might not be able to. And Brock Purdy is actually going to have to step up and sling the rock and be a little bit more than a game manager. And that's not to say he's been a game manager the last year and a half here. I'm just saying, like, he might actually have to step up and sling the ball around the yard, play more at a Kirk Cousins kind of level than at a game facilitator level. So, which certainly could be within his realm of outcomes this year if Kyle Shanahan forces him into that position. Cameron, are you buying a top 6 bounce back?
I see it a little. It's tough for me to see it just because I'm not 100% convinced that the wide receiver room is going to be great enough. However, I will say CMC's fully healthy, Kittle's fully healthy all year. I do think, the benefits for that in this offense are just so immense. He did benefit last year from 5 rushing touchdowns, obviously only 20 passing touchdowns. So I don't know. I could see the touchdowns being there. I just don't know. I always question the efficiency in this offense because it's always ridiculous. The fact he was at 8.5 yards per attempt, third in the NFL last season, and he just keeps doing that over and over. And I keep going, there's no way they do it again. And he probably will. Top 6, 7 is a little rich for me, but at the same time, like San Francisco is a tough one to doubt when Kyle Shanahan just does it over and over and over again.
I really wanted to drop a hot take right here. I don't think I can, though, the more I chew on it. So I'll pose it as a question instead. Who's more likely to return to a top 7 quarterback this year, Brock Purdy or Jordan Love? Because Jordan Love is going as a quarterback 17 right now, substantially later than Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, you can see it if you're over on YouTube right now, Bo Nix, Justin Fields, literally within 5 picks of Brock Purdy right now. Yet Jordan Love is going, I believe, 2-3 rounds afterwards.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
both of you chime in here because I'm curious. Because I have a stat I want to throw out about Jordan Love, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
I think I lean Brock Purdy just because Love worries me a little bit that he didn't run quite as much last year. And I think he's got
groin injury from week 8 on.
That's true, but just significantly better weapons in San Francisco than Green Bay if Kittle and McCaffrey are healthy. Because I think those two are just better than anything Green Bay has.
And I know like small sample size that we're looking at a season each with what I'm about to say, but I've seen Brock Purdy finish, top 6 with Christian McCaffrey in the offense, and I haven't seen it with Jordan Love and with Josh Jacobs in the offense. And I'm not saying that like Josh Jacobs is on the Christian McCaffrey level, but I think that presence in the Green Bay offense does affect some things. And Lucas, you brought up the groin injury. That's totally valid. I still just think it's a Shanahan versus LaFleur type of offensive approach.
So this is a stat I want to bring up because I knew it would come up in terms of Josh Jacobs being in town now. The Packers last year, 3.6% pass rate over expectation in 5 games with a healthy Jordan Love. That was 7th highest in the league. And without Jordan Love, without a fully healthy Jordan Love, negative 8.2 pass rate over expectation, which was dead last in the entire league. So I'm just wondering, Jordan Love could easily, I think he was almost my candidate for bounce back player. And then I'm like, wait, there's a super easy one we could just talk about. That was one that I'm just like curious about, where I'm like, we saw Jordan Love do it with Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs in 2023. Actually finished ahead of Brock Purdy that year. Who's to say Jordan Love shouldn't be in this conversation either? So that's just the only other piece of the conversation I want to have of like,
no, that makes sense.
What if the average for both of them is just like quarterback 12 and that's where they belong? So just a little thought process I wanted to throw out there as well around those two and Brock Purdy specifically, getting back to that top 7 quarterback tier. The obvious name that we haven't talked about yet, fellas. How about Dak Prescott, the Dallas Cowboys? All right, I'll keep this one short and sweet because we need a here we go drop from Dak Prescott on the channel. But sometimes we just don't need to make this harder than it needs to be, because in 6 fully healthy seasons, Dak has never finished lower than the quarterback 11 overall. The Cowboys bring in George Pickens this offseason to play alongside CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. This team still didn't invest anything in the running back position, and don't tell me that basically $5 million in Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams. Actually, I think it might have even been less or slightly more than that. That's not an investment. 6th round pick on Jaden Blue, that's not an investment. Okay, they haven't done anything at the running back position. And it's not going to be surprising if this team is top 12 in pass rate for the 3rd straight year now, when you consider some of the question marks they have on the defensive side of the ball as well. Like, I'm sorry I don't have anything like super deep and analytically hard hitting for you, but like we just don't need to apply rocket science to third grade math. Like Dak is a borderline quarterback 1 option for me this year, and he's being drafted as such as quarterback 13.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him 2023, 4,500 yards, 36 passing touchdowns. So, that's within the range of outcomes right now in his career. And that offense was pretty much just CeeDee Lamb. So now you add in George Pickens. I understand, the scheme might change a little bit, but it's not like Mike McCarthy was exactly overly pass happy himself. So I don't know. I just think that, he feels like a no-brainer right there. I just don't get the hate on Dak when it comes to fantasy football because he's been nothing but awesome when he's healthy.
Any reservations for you, Ty, on Dak Prescott this year?
Quarterback 3 in 2023, quarterback 8 in 2021, quarterback 2 in 2019. Pretty sure it's 2025. So
right, odd year merchant, baby. Yes,
odd year merchant. Is that the narrative we're running with here? Oh,
yes.
There's the hard hitting analytics you need. Not the fact that his touchdown rate dipped to 3.8%, which was the first time since 2020 that it had dipped below 5.8% for Derek Brown.
2020.
What you really need to hear is that Dak Prescott is an odd year merchant.
You just sound like a nerd with the 0.8%
touchdown rate. I know.
Dude, it is as simple as like the Minnesota Lynx and the San Francisco Giants and the years.
Just pick out which years Dak is great and which years he's not, and find your own pattern and just call it sticky. You'll sound like a genius every single time. Let's move on to the running back position. Cam, you probably chose the number 1 bounce back candidate this year, yet despite actually like a decent amount of question marks this offseason, Breece Hall is still being drafted as the running back 13 right now. How high could his bounce back be in your eyes?
I think he can get back to top 8 status. I think the days like top 3, those are done, right? Especially with Justin Fields in town. We have to admit, like, the receiving upside is just not going to quite be what it was when he finished as a running back 2, right? Because it was 94 targets. If he gets there with Justin Fields, right, I mean, that is going to be the outlier of all outlier seasons. And slightly concerned with the touchdown production as well. It hasn't been great. That's the same thing we talked about with Garrett Wilson. Do I think Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields are going to be the 2 to fix that? Not necessarily. Maybe they score a little bit more than last year. The thing he does have going for him is, they talk about maybe it's a little bit more of a committee. Part of that is Braylon Allen just wasn't good last year. I think he was one of the worst in EPA per rush attempt. So just not awesome. And then the other fact is, I talked about this last week when I was talking about, I don't remember what player, Javonte Adams, I think, with Aaron Rodgers, but the fact that the Jets ran the ball the least amount of times last year because Aaron just wanted to throw it over and over and over again. In fact, they ran the ball 6 times less per game than the average NFL team. Rams were dead middle in rush attempts with 450, over 95 more a game. And when you compare them to the Lions, they ran the ball 10 times less than the Lions did per game. And Aaron Glenn's going to want to emulate that a little bit. I'm not saying, right, he doesn't have Gibbs and Montgomery in that offensive line, so he's not going to do it the same, but he's going to want to get close. And Breece talked about it. He said he felt like he banged up his knee and was hurt pretty much most of the season. And if you watched him, he looked like it. He didn't look like Breece Hall. He wasn't explosive. He only averaged 4.2 yards per carry, only 0.13 missed tackles forced per attempt, which was 46 of all running backs with at least 50 carries. So the bounce back is both predicated on the fact that I think they're going to run more. So even with it might be a committee, he's still the lead back in the committee. He's still the most talented running back they have. And I think the talent's going to show through again this season. Do I think it's going to be like another 5.9 yards per attempt like we saw his rookie year? No, I do not think that's what it's going to be. But obviously, like I said at the top, tempered a little bit because of receiving upside, touchdown upside. But I do think that overall volume is going to get a little bit better and just efficiency within that volume too.
So, Ty, I'm actually going to let you get your thoughts in here first, and then I'm going to come back to camera before I contribute mine.
I think with Breece, what it comes down to for me is if we're not going to get the receiving work that, again, propelled him to being a top 5 guy, what else are we going to be banking on? if it's because I don't know if it's going to be touchdowns necessarily, just because I don't think this Jets offense is going to be that potent. So does he ugly volume his way back into the top 10 with carries? There's a chance. I mean, that the Jets offensive line, their run game with Tanner Engstrand coming over from Detroit should be way better, at least on paper, should be way better
on paper
than what it's been in the past couple of years. So I can see the path, but I think when it comes to maybe the cheaper ways or the faster ways to kind of bounce back with receiving a touchdowns, I'm not so sure about. So maybe the best way to say it, like how you guys kind of felt about Brock Purdy, I kind of feel about Breece Hall. That's not to say that he's a bad pick or anything, but I do just kind of find myself asking, where does the bounce back land? And if it's inside the top 10, sure, I totally get it then.
I already have trust issues with Aaron Glenn is my biggest issue, because I have zero experience with him as a head coach, how he wants to use this backfield. There's a lot of different cases you make in terms of like Justin Fields could be a rushing quarterback and open up on play action, some running lanes for Breece Hall a little bit more if you want some more efficiency there. You're another year removed from the ACL. I just like, then he says things like, I would say that we have 3 running backs on this team that we're going to utilize as much as possible, close quote. It could be a 1, 2, 3 punch with the guys we have. If we can get them all on the field at one time, we'll do that. I think that's just a stupid comment, because you're not going to do that. There's no way you're going to do that, Aaron Glenn. I'm calling your bluff on that. But like, then we get reports that like Aaron Glenn called Breece Hall and said, you're going to be the guy this year. Like, what am I supposed to take out of all of this? So I'm kind of with Ty on this one. I think Breece is the most talented back in that backfield. No question. I think he should get majority of the touches, 57% of the touches, to Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. I just don't know what I'm going to get out of Aaron Glenn yet. And I think that's like my biggest hang up on Breece being a bounce back. Like up until literally this past weekend, I don't think I had taken Breece Hall once in a draft, because he's one of my bigger question marks coming into the year.
Yeah. So the 2 things I'll say to that, Najee Harris in the 6 games of Justin Fields, top 15 in targets last season. Breece Hall is a much better receiving back than Najee Harris was, and Jaylen Warren was in that backfield for 4 of those games. So it's not like Justin Fields completely takes away receiving upside. It's just we're not going to see him in the Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Etienne tier anymore. It's going to be, probably 50 to 60 targets instead of 80 to 90.
Sure.
The other thing I'll say is, again, if they return to average rushing the ball and he gets 50% of rush attempts, that's still 30 more rush attempts this next season than what he had last year. So you've kind of factored that in of like, volume probably still going to get better even if his snap share comes down.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if you're going to add in there at the end. I'll jump back in. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I don't want to sit here and act like I think Breece Hall is a bad football player and he's a bad pick at running back 13. I think looking at the other wide receivers, I mean, the elite quarterbacks that go in the range, I think running back 13 is about right for the bounce back we could see this year, which is certainly a bounce back. I mean, actually, let me rephrase that. I do think he'll outscore Kyren Williams this year. I'm kind of fully OUT on Kyren at this point. We'll talk about that in an episode coming up potentially. Not
spicy to little tease there.
Hey, I'm not going to sit here for that episode. I'm not going to talk about players down in the 15th round of fantasy drafts. I'm trying to get into like some juicy names for that episode. Well, not to spoil that one. That's a little bit of a tease for all you out there, but yeah, I think I'm just so confused and torn, because what I see is that what I believe, is that Breece Hall is the best running back in that running back room, no questions asked. What I'm questioning, what I'm questioning and seeing is, what is Aaron Glenn trying to communicate to me about this backfield and how he wants to deploy it? I don't know. I just don't know on June 23rd. So talk to me again like late July, early August, when I have a much better idea of how I think this backfield is gonna shake out. Fellas, why don't we take a quick break here? We'll come back after we hear from our friends over at Underdog, continue the running backs, and move on to the pass catchers. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. So far, we talked about CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Breece Hall as bounce back candidates. It's kind of tough at the running back position, Ty, because a lot of the players were either projecting to break out this year or are kind of like, yeah, you've had your breakout season and you're kind of being drafted appropriately here, or you're like just being totally devalued, or you're a rookie running back. I mean, that's literally like the top 30 running backs probably. So we kind of got to get down the board here a ways. And I do like Javonte Williams as a bounce back candidate this year.
Yeah, like is a interesting way to put it.
Okay, let me rephrase that. I think when you consider all of your options, Javonte Williams is probably a top 4 guy who could be a bounce back candidate this year.
Yeah, I mean the list is pretty small, but Javonte definitely is on that list. And I'm just going to try to keep this one short and sweet because I do think we're not going to get the Javonte Williams of old. I think we are looking at a very different Javonte Williams ever since the knee injury. But, you know, I think we would hedge our bets that Javonte is going to be the lead guy for majority of the year because at this point, we don't know. It does, you know, people make it sound like it's not going to be Javonte because Miles Sanders is getting the snaps with the first team, and then Jaden Blue is somehow everyone's favorite sleeper rookie running back, despite the profile that he had coming into the draft in the offensive line and all that. But I think the best way to express why I think Javonte could bounce back is just that he's the guy that's gotten the workload in the past. Like he's had 2 years with over 250 touches. Miles Sanders, who's I think going into year 7, I believe it is, has only 1 year with over 250 touches. So there's experience with Javonte Williams handling a workload. And Jaden Blue's weaknesses, the guy has 7 career fumbles coming into the league. Like that's been an issue. And he was the number 2 guy in terms of touches last year on Texas. He was outcarried and had less receptions than Trey Wisner, who wasn't even in the draft this year. So I don't know if we'll see the Javonte of old, but it won't surprise me if he kind of ugly volumes and kind of Rico Dowdle 2.0s his way to being a top 25 to 30 guy, just because he is going to be the guy to get the most touches in this Dallas offense.
Yeah, I mean, Rico Dowdle, what you need from Javonte Williams this year is Rico Dowdle, and it's a bounce back. And like, I know people will see him be like, man, Rico Dowdle, pretty dang good last year. Yeah, considering you drafted him as like the running back 38, the same range as you did Javonte Williams last year. But even, yeah, you know, the running back 22 overall in half PPR formats, only 235 totes, just over almost 1,100 yards. How many were only 2 rushing touchdowns on the year, right? I like that. That's all you need. You don't need that much from Javonte. You just need him to probably be the lead back. It's somewhere around 225 totes or so, which maybe is a bigger ask than I'm thinking. But when you just don't invest much into this running back room, based on what I've seen out of Miles Sanders, I'm not convinced he's like any better than Javonte Williams, as a podcast that has notoriously been anti-Miles Sanders over the years. Jaden Blue is a 6th round rookie. Who says Javonte can't get 220 totes and pound 5 or 6 touchdowns into the end zone this year? I mean, that's what you're looking at here. It's not a big ask.
Yeah, it's he really doesn't have to do a lot. Is the issue?
No,
number one. Like,
right.
If he is 80% of what he was when he came in the NFL, you're very happy with this season. because he's gonna just get enough volume, and Dak and this offense is gonna have them in enough positions to score. And I mean, yeah, and then you add in the price too, and that's like the same thing. I mean, like you're saying with Rico Dowdle, like it could be gross. You're not saying like bounce back for Javonte Williams is not bounce back to top 10. Like
No,
let's keep that clear. His best season, he was running back 17. That's what you're hoping for the bounce back to be too, right? That's
like
the
peak.
steal. Yes, 100%.
Like peak.
So the bounce back, I 100% think can happen. We just need to put it in the lens of we're not bouncing back to where we're talking about like Breece Hall going. Okay, we're bouncing back to maybe he can be what Breece Hall was last year at his peak.
Can he be a flex option in your weekly lineups? Because right now he's not being drafted as such. Can Javonte Williams be a weekly flex, if not a fluctuating RB2 in your lineup? That's what the bounce back is. And it's not hard to create that. We'll keep it moving along here. We'll talk about Travis Etienne. It's not a fun name. I know people have already written him off. But I just want to pose a question. It's the only thing I want to do. I just want to pose a question. What if Travis Etienne is still the best running back in this backfield? What if? What if the first round running back is still the best running back in this backfield? And even if he's not, okay, what's to say he isn't 2025 Rashad White? I don't think that's a big ask either, because even when Bucky was the running back 8 from week 6 on last year, Rashad White was still the running back 20 in half PPR formats. Yeah. He's averaging 12.2 fantasy points per game. I'm not going to lay out the efficiency metrics for you, because all you got to do is turn on the film and watch how bad Travis Etienne was last year. Like you don't need me to read off what the film just screams at you. But I'm kind of like confused why people are just automatically assuming Etienne is washed in that 4th round rookie. Bashal Tootin is just automatically better than him. I know I made the case that Bashal Tootin could be the next breakout RB1, but I can also sit here and make the case to you that there's a multitude of ways that Travis Etienne can be a great bounce back player this year from his running back 37 finish last year, whether it is being the best running back in this offense and having a top 15 finish, whether it is playing a more complementary split backfield, more receiving back role alongside a Tank Bigsby or Bashal Tootin while still getting majority of the touches. You can paint this picture probably 3 to 4 different ways that Travis Etienne finishes as a borderline running back 2 this year, which is a bounce back from basically not being in your lineup the second half of the season. That's it. That's the case for Travis Etienne. I'm not going to make it harder than it is, because it's totally possible he's still the best running back in Jacksonville, and Liam Cohen can work his magic and turn this backfield into a much more productive unit this year. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Bashal Tootin is not Bucky Irving. Like I'm going to stand on that, and if I'm wrong, that'd be the 1%, and I'm okay with that. You got to remember too, shoulder injury week 4, he played through it, and then he missed a week with a hamstring, week 6. And I think sometimes we just think, he's playing, so he's fine, kind of a thing. And these injuries linger. Like these guys don't have enough time to fully recover from these injuries throughout the season. So if he looks bad after he gets injured, it's probably because he never got healthy again. And we just don't take that into account. And if he comes back and he's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, he's going to be the starter all season long. And we're going to be like, we should have taken him here.
So 2 things I do want to name before I allow you to chip in here, Ty. 1, Cameron, just because I make the case for him does not give you permission to spam me with Travis Etienne trades in our Dynasty League. Yes, as I'm ready to watch my phone just blow up from trade packages from Cameron for players that include Travis Etienne. But 2, I also want to acknowledge, as very true, my phone did just light up now with the trade request. So number 2, I recognize the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line is substantially better than the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line. I also want to name that. And I'm not going to copy and paste anything Liam Cohen related over to Jacksonville when that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line is easily top 5 in the league. Ty, where do you land on an Etienne bounce back this year? Because for me, it's just attacking ambiguity, and you can slice this pie, again, 5-6 different ways, like I mentioned.
I feel like I've been shouting from the mountaintops for the past month and a half that exact argument. If he's the most talented guy I think the concerns that people have is that he's not an efficient guy, and so that opens the door. You brought up Rachaad White. There are plenty of instances where efficiency is not the only thing that keeps a guy out of the lineup and off of the field. Sometimes it's just making the right reads. Sometimes it's just making the right play when you need to. So I feel like I feel like I'm now justified with all of the pro Travis Etienne propaganda that I've been consuming and taking in this year, and justifying the almost 20% exposure of him on my underdog drafts.
Oh, I'm not that happy.
Because again, this Jacksonville offense is better than what it was last year. Etienne should easily bounce back. I think Etienne is like my number one bounce back candidate, like in all of fantasy football.
Well, I guess I should have given you Travis Etienne instead of claiming him for myself.
Yeah, you're a little selfish over there.
Well, I let me actually go check where my Etienne exposures are at currently. Because they should be up there. Yeah, I'm sitting right around 17% Etienne. So I guess I shouldn't be all that shocked when you're sitting around 20%. It's just that range of the drafts where I'm like, Cam Scadaboo, Tyrone Tracy. I'll take the guy who I've seen do it before and finish as a top 3 option before. Like, I'm not just going to let 1 year just completely wash away what I've seen from him in previous seasons, albeit, last year looked really, really bad. You can't ignore the film on that one. All right, let's pivot to the pass catchers here, fellas, because we got 6 of them to cover, 3 wide receivers and 3 tight ends. Cameron, go ahead. Make me the case on why Michael Pittman Jr. is set to bounce back this year.
All right. I'll understand. I need to get some things out of the way. I understand his QB play will not be great. I understand that Josh Downs looked pretty good last year.
It's great last year.
I understand that he was the wide receiver 54 in points per game last year. I understand all 3 of these things. But do you understand that he played most of the season with a broken back, right? I just think we're underrating that when we are talking about Michael Pittman. Do you understand that before last year, he had 129, 141, and 156 targets the 3 years prior? I will say, maybe I'm falling for it again. Maybe he's this year's Deontay Johnson for me. But when I look at Michael Pittman, I don't just think at 27 years old, he fell off the cliff, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he played with a fractured back last year. I think he's still going to be the number 1 in this offense. I do. I am of belief. I have that belief. Now, if it's Anthony Richardson all year long, does that mean a lot? Probably not. He's probably still barely a top 30 wide receiver. But if we get the mix of Daniel Jones thrown in there, I think we can see him creep back up into that early flex, late wide receiver 2 range that he's kind of lived in throughout his career. I don't think he's toast, and I don't think that Josh Downs has fully passed him because, again, I just can't get over the fact that he had a fracture. I mean, we were told for like 3 weeks in a row he's going to go on the IR, and then just never did and played through it. Like, it wasn't like it was, one of those things that after the fact they're like, oh yeah, he had like everybody knew this, that he had like a serious back problem going on this whole time, and yet he played through it. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and betting that what we saw in the 3 years leading up to this, that he can get back to that sort of play.
As the primary Josh Downs Kool-Aid drinker on this podcast, I'm going to default to you first, Ty, and let you chime in with your thoughts on Michael Pittman, because this is one I go back and forth on.
I wholeheartedly disagree, because Josh Downs is that guy. Don't know where you're getting the Michael Pittman steam from, but Josh Downs could literally get like 100 targets. That's not a lot.
What?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, he could get 100 targets. I like that. Yes, you are right. Yes, 100 targets for Josh.
He's 140 for Michael Pittman. Right.
Yes, if you could not catch the sarcasm on that one, I apologize. Maybe it wasn't the best use of it, but Michael Pittman should definitely bounce back. Like, I don't know of any player that succeeds in fantasy football with a broken back, and I don't care how many times we need to say it, because it feels like we need to say it over and over and over again to get people to be like, oh, wait, a broken back? Yeah, a broken back. Like these, you don't do well with these things. And like, if Tyreek Hill could have as bad of a year with just a finger problem, it kind of explains a broken back problem for Michael Pittman Jr. Totally different situations. But again, like, that's really what you need to understand, because we are talking about a guy that does have a year with 150 targets under his belt. Like that can't go unnoticed. So Michael Pittman should definitely bounce back, even if it's not a week in, week out, lock in your lineup type player. If he's still your wide receiver 4 and you're considering him in your flex every single week, bounce back. That is a bounce back year for him then.
So, Cameron, just to maybe get a bit more specific on the parameters of what you're viewing as a bounce back for Michael Pittman, what range are you looking at him finishing this year?
Top 30 season.
Top 30. Okay. All right.
I'm looking like I'm thinking, me personally, I think he can probably be between wide receiver 20 and 26 overall. He might not finish their points per game, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at him finishing. Obviously, if it's a full season, Anthony Richardson changes a little bit, and we're probably 36 to 30.
I'm just looking at the names up in that range. And again, we're making the case, right? Which I think your case is strong in its own right. You're looking at like the Travis Hunter, Cortland Sutton, George Pickens, Zay Flowers range, right around the wide receiver 30.
Yeah, and I hate that range. So
yeah, I know, because you just hate Zay Flowers, and he's always the last one picked in that range. But is there a world where Pittman finishes ahead of Waddle and Calvin Ridley? I think so. I like Rome too much. Jordan Addison, potentially. Jawan Jennings. Godwin coming off the ankle injury. Debo at his age. I mean, there's worlds where you can make all this happen. But, once we even get to Debo, we're looking at wide receiver 39. Ooh. So my question isn't necessarily, will Michael Pittman finish ahead of his ADP this year and ahead of wide receiver 54? I'm very confident he'll do so. I just prefer Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs is the guy who we should be considering for that wide receiver 30 range rather than Michael Pittman, personally. But that's just me. If Daniel Jones is that quarterback, I mean, he's a part of the wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 25, and both Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. Last year, I don't even know where I got Brian Thomas from in that equation. I'm probably thinking about Malik Neighbors. Wide receiver 10 and Malik Neighbors and the wide receiver 25 and Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'm not going to sit here and say Michael Pittman is toast. I just don't know how big the leap is going to be, personally. And if Daniel Jones is, like, how much better do we actually believe Daniel Jones is than Anthony Richardson?
Yeah.
Can we be honest about that?
I think he is good enough to support 2 top 36 wide receivers.
Okay. Which I'm not going to push back on, especially when I think Josh Downs can get to that range. Ty, we'll move on to Chris Olave here. Again, another one with questionable quarterback play. Go ahead and make the case here.
Yeah, if you thought you were scared because of Anthony Richardson, then let me introduce you to Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jay Kaner.
I'm pretty scared of Tyler Shuck, dude.
Yeah, and Olave is going 14 spots ahead of Michael Pittman. So, not a great start with this one. But, here's the reality of the situation for Chris Olave. We're 1 year removed from being a top 16 wide receiver in target share and usage. He's top 10 in target rate and yards per route run over the past 3 seasons. So if you didn't think that Chris Olave was the alpha in this wide receiver room, there you go. And getting Kellen Moore should at least make this offense a little more fantasy friendly. It may not be it may not be super successful in year 1, but if there's a guy that's going to find success besides Alvin Kamara, I would expect it to be Chris Olave. According to Nathan Yonke of PFF, Kellen Moore's primary slot receiver has averaged between 15.3 and 21.5 PPR points per game. That's really good. That's really good. And Olave has the better yards per route run than Rashid Shaheed from the slot. So if there's a guy that's going to get the slot work at least early on in the year, I'm going to hedge my bet that's going to be Chris Olave. We've talked plenty before about the easy targets that you can get from your slot or for your slot receiver. So yeah, another ugly volume argument with this one. You're not going to tune into a Saints game unless you are a Saints fan to watch Chris Olave like help you win a week in fantasy, but someone has to catch the ball in this offense, and I feel like it's going to be Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, because that's what Kellen Moore is going to try to do, is to get the ball into his best players' hands on offense.
I think that's the exact case you have to make for a Chris Olave bounce back, is that you have got to get Tyler Shuck some easy touches here to your best playmakers. And it's not that Chris Olave is the only ticket in town, but when Rashid Shaheed is coming off, I believe it was a meniscus injury, that's kind of your only other wide receiver. Like, sorry, I'm not all that interested in a washed Brandon Cooks at this point.
Bub Means?
Bub Means who?
Bub Means. Yes.
Love me a little Bub Means on the waiver wire and the waiver wire stashes, but let's not kid ourselves here. MVS ain't in town anymore, so he ain't a threat like he was last year. No, but like that's the upside, or the bounce back case you have to make for Chris Olave is they got to get Tyler Shuck some easy button completions. Otherwise, he's going to struggle from the get go. And so if you're going to put Chris Olave in the slot, if you're going to give him, the CeeDee Lamb treatment, if you will, when Kellen Moore was in Dallas, like those are the easy button things you need to help Tyler Shuck play on time and in rhythm with. And that's what you just have to hope for from Olave. I'm terrified Olave can't get above wide receiver 30 with Tyler Shuck, though, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm kind of scared of that. Yeah. How scared are you? How scared are you, Cam?
I mean,
I'm pretty scared right now.
My issue is I love Chris Olave.
I know.
That's my issue. I wish I didn't like Chris Olave. That'd make everything so much easier.
All you could be could have been a Chris Olave hater from the moment he declared for the NFL draft. All you could have been one of those
people
guys.
We know.
It would have been
overrated
awesome.
Prospect.
It would have been awesome to be on that train. But yeah, I mean, we can't act like he's had good quarterback play. Andy Dalton, a little bit of Jameis, whatever he had last year with Derek Carr and Derek Carr in 2023. I mean, like, obviously Derek Carr is significantly better, but like, it's not like he's ever had like fantastic QB play, and he's still produced. Kellen Moore, Ty laid it out. He's good at getting the guy the ball, or his guys the ball. So I have optimism that he can finish up there. It's just, I just don't know what you could even consider the up. Is it like wide receiver 20? Would you be like,
let me define this. I think it's closer to 25 than to 40.
Okay.
I'm not putting Chris Olave in my top 25. I can tell you that for sure. He's that is like rarefied air to be top 24. But if you can be a flex play week in, week out, because you are the number one option in your passing attack, it's got to count for something.
What a fall from grace when we're drafting Chris Olave as like the wide receiver 15 last year. Yeah. And now it's like, yeah, you know what? If he's a considerable flex play in my lineup, like that's a bounce back.
For sure.
That's for sure.
I mean,
wow. I'm not blaming you, but
no more concussions. That's all we ask.
Well, that's also what we need.
We just see a full season. That would be a great bounce back. Yeah.
That might actually be the best judge of a bounce back season for Chris Olave. I'm going to go a little bit of a different route than you both. I want to go a seasoned vet that I think I can make the case that he could potentially be like a Terry McLaurin or a Cortland Sutton this year. And I'm not saying like finishing as high as like a top 15 player overall.
You've already got me. I'm already in. I'm all in.
That
argument was perfect. You nailed it. I mean, I don't even need to hear anymore. He's Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton. I hook, line, and sinker there. That was perfect.
We do get like veteran bounce back wide receivers though. I mean, I using the examples of Terry McLaurin and Cortland Sutton, the common thread that Nick Ercolano over at BDGE found, it's when these wide receivers get new quarterbacks. You have Jaden Daniels last year, Bo Nix, both guys taken very early in the first round of the NFL draft. why can't it be Cam Ward this year?
Mhm.
I understand Cam Ward is only a rookie, but like he's automatically a step up from whatever the hodgepodge of disaster that Tennessee was thrown out last year with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. 78th in catchable target rate last year for Calvin Ridley. He barely caught 50% of his 120 targets. He caught 64 of his 120 targets last year. Yet despite that, Ridley has gone for 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, and he's kind of the only ticket in town. Like, no disrespect to Chikakonkwo and Tyler Lockett. I'm not expecting much out of Elick Ailman in his rookie season. But who's to say Calvin Ridley can't be that veteran breakout this year that, you know what, Cam Ward, he's going to be aggressive, pushing the football downfield. He's going to be aggressive, trying to fit it into tight holes to Calvin Ridley. But the difference between a Cam Ward and a Will Levis is that when Cam Ward throws that stupid interception, he locks back in and he says, okay, all right, no, I can't do that. Let's make an adjustment. And you saw that at Miami. They would come back and just win these games after a disastrous mistake from Cam Ward. So, Calvin Ridley, like, sign me up that he could be like Cortland Sutton-esque this year and give you like top 15 upside at the position.
Yeah, I wasn't joking either. Like, you said it. I'm like, yeah, that's because it is. I mean, it's as far as Cam Ward can take him.
Yes.
If Cam Ward is truly worthy of the first overall pick, he's going to be pretty good. And so, yeah, it's man, golly, you got me good. I
left him speechless.
Now. Yeah,
I left him speechless.
Good work. You win.
I win. We'll shut the episode down there now that I've won. Thanks for tuning. No, Ty, you seem like you have a few reservations on Calvin Ridley.
I mean, you guys aren't worried at all about Xavier Restrepo?
About
Van Jefferson?
Forget about that.
Hey. The next AJ Brown and Treylon Burks.
What is Xavier
totally ready
Restrepo?
for Treylon Burks to make the team this year?
What is Xavier Restrepo again? Isn't he the next Cooper Kupp mixed with Jerry Rice mixed with Randy Moss? Is that what?
Why are we taking so many digs
unnecessary?
Today? We'd wake up. Did you both drink Haterade as well today?
Hey, how many got us sometimes?
Member berries are hitting hard today.
Yes.
I mean, this is pretty straightforward. You're getting substantial better quarterback play. You're going from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph to Cam Ward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it can be as simple as that. I know we like to justify a lot. We try to persuade with a ton of stats and arguments, but I think it is really as simple as you're getting better quarterback play. And Calvin Ridley being the best, I will just say, the best talent on that offense.
Yes.
He's going to get the ball. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
We heard Cam Ward in the scouting process be, in that range of like the JJ McCarthy to Bo Nix, right? And we just saw Bo Nix support Cortland Sutton to a phenomenal fantasy finish last year. So, if you're really like, well, but Cam Ward isn't as good as a Jaden Daniels. No, I never said that. But I do think when I scouted Cam Ward this year, I agreed with consensus. I put him right above Bo Nix. Him and JJ McCarthy were neck and neck, but I put him right in that range with Bo Nix, and I think he could easily elevate a Calvin Ridley just as Bo Nix did to Cortland Sutton last year. Let's wrap it up at the tight end. Go ahead.
Here's all that I'll say. Last thing, at least Calvin Ridley won't have to worry about a horizontal raid like Terry did.
Yes. Gosh, yeah. Yeah, you got a competent Brian Callahan there who wants to play on time and on target. And is willing to push the middle of the field, push the ball down the sidelines as well. And Cam Ward's going to step up and do that because Cam Ward is willing to be aggressive with the football. We'll wrap out the tight end position here. We'll try and keep this short and sweet because really two of these guys, it's pretty obvious. We don't need to make massive cases for. Ty, maybe we'll spend a little bit more time on yours, but TJ Hockenson is probably the most obvious bounce back candidate this year. Playing with JJ McCarthy and a Kevin O'Connell offense, tight end 5 right now, people are expecting it.
Yeah, this one's cheating. I will admit he was already top 5 in targets after returning from injury last year.
So position to call bounce backs though, because you're throwing darts every year.
Yeah,
like this is locking in.
No, 100%. I mean, we got lucky that he was hurt last year, so I could call him a bounce back this year. He's a proven top 4 tight end in the 2 seasons prior to injury. JJ McCarthy led Colston Loveland to the most career touchdowns that as a tight end in Michigan history. KOC schemes it up for Hawk. Like I don't know.
Jordan
It is
Addison missed
cheating.
3
I'm
games,
sorry.
likely.
I don't know what else I need to say about that. He's going to be a top 5 guy.
Only thing I'll add, he is my most drafted player over on Underdog right now. 1/3 of my drafts I have taken him in. 33% of drafts I have TJ Hockenson in.
Beautiful.
I literally can't stop drafting him. Like he pops up on the screen and this like, if Josh Downs isn't there, probably TJ Hockenson is going to be my pick. Like I've just resorted to that and I've been very okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at, Ty?
I just picture Cam going up to TJ Hockenson at like training camp and just going, "Hey, you were my bounce back guy for tight end, so thanks for getting hurt last year because it was cheating. So appreciate it, man."
You made this podcast so easy for me, and I just had to let you know. I mean,
he'd get
heck
it.
of a generous guy.
He'd get it. He gets the Minnesota Nice thing. He gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Well, Ty, your bounce back tight end isn't as much cheating. Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. I like this pick. I really do. I just like, I have a soft spot for Dallas Goedert. I'm not going to sit here and make the case that he's like a top 10 lock or anything this year, but you know what? This Eagles offense is just too good to not consider Goedert a bounce back.
I mean, I think I need to start it off with this. We've been waiting for Goedert to bounce back since 2021. Like 2020 was the Doug Peterson year. 2021 was when he played 15 games and he was the tight end 8 in points per game. Then in 2022, we got him as a tight end 5 in points per game, but he only played in 12 games. Then in 2023, we got him as a tight end 12 in points per game, but it was below 10 points per game. And that was the Brian Johnson offense. So that was unfortunate. And then in 2024, he was the tight end 10 in points per game, but he only played in 10 games. And then we had the Saquon kind of, arrival, I'll say, in Philly. So we've been waiting for 2021 Dallas Goedert to really come back, where there is no external factors that are affecting his production in fantasy. And I think there's a chance that it's going to actually be this year. And I laughed when I was getting ready for this because I was like, man, we've said this every year. We've said this every year about Dallas Goedert. And it's just because he keeps going low because there's the injury kind of worry that people have and all that. So, we've talked about the possibility of the team throwing more this year because you're coming off a year where you led the league in team rushing attempts, or you were top 5 at least. So there's an opportunity to bounce back in that way. But according to Nathan Yonke, again, Goddard's nearly 50 receiving yards per game over the last 3 years is top 3 in the position among tight ends and ranks 6th best alone last year. He's averaged 13 PPR points per game if AJ Brown and Javonte Smith are inactive, and 10.8 points per game when everyone's healthy. So we're getting a floor of nearly 11 points per game with contingent upside to be in the top 10 on a weekly basis, really. And you're going to be closer to 5 than 10. So there is some risk that Goedert needs to stay healthy, that, you are kind of the number 4 option here because you want to run the ball with Saquon, you want to feed AJ Brown, and you want to feed Devontae Smith. So there is that side of it. But for Dallas Goedert going as the tight end 15, that, again, despite the injury problems, has been finishing closer to 10 than to 15. Maybe it's not so much a bounce back, but I think, again, for everything that you think about with Philly, there's a chance that Goedert can get back to tight end 7, tight end 8, and that's a bounce back from what we've been seeing the last couple of years.
First and foremost, you shouldn't have doubted yourself. The Eagles, 621 rush attempts, 67 more than any other team in the league last year.
I knew it.
Second in rushing yards with 3,048, which was second best to the Ravens, but still over 400 yards more than the third place Washington Commanders with only 2,600 rushing yards last year. You bring up Goddard's health. I'm not projecting injuries for any of AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, or anything, but like we've seen when one of them goes down, Goedert gets an immediate uptick, man. And it's not like AJ Brown has the cleanest bill of health. Devonta Smith has missed some time over the years as well. again, I'm not projecting it. I'm not telling you that it's going to happen this year, but it takes one of them to falter, and all of a sudden, you're looking at Dallas Goedert as a weekly top 12 option. You're kind of setting it and forgetting it with how talented this Eagles offense is. Anything you want to sprinkle on top of that one, Cameron?
I'm out on Goedert. I am.
I'm okay with that too. Yeah, I get why people might not want him.
My issue is I don't think they're going to throw the ball enough. And when you have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown both in the game, that's where it becomes worrisome. Last season, he had 2 games above 6 targets, 3 games above 5 targets. He only had over 50 yards 3 times in 10 games last year. So, like, that's my concern, is just when they're all 3 on the field, he's the odd one left out. Like you said, if they're missing time, then there is that uptick. But when you're already such a run-heavy team, to be the third passing option, that's what worries me about Dallas Goedert. That's why I really haven't been taking him in drafts.
So would you have preferred if Ty talked about Jake Ferguson instead?
Honestly, yeah.
Interesting.
I would take Ferguson.
Is that just because the run game is just prominent? Because you're looking at the same thing.
Yes.
It's
the run game is so much, like, it is, like you said, I mean, they're just running at a rate that is just so much greater than, Dallas will run at, with, especially looking at their running back room. Like, Dallas can't, even if they wanted to. Sure.
Which I would also prefer Jake Ferguson to Dallas Goedert, but I do think the case is there for Goedert, at least, just looking at the raw numbers of it. I'll go ahead and I'll bring us home here. Again, I'm kind of cheating because Evan Engram was the tight end 32 last year. Almost anything is going to be better than the tight end 32 this year. Sean Payton just made it very clear and obvious throughout the offseason. Hey, look, we need to get better at the running back position, the tight end position, and we're going to make sure our offense improves in those areas. So what did they do? As soon as Evan Engram got released, they went out, claimed him right away off of waivers, signed him to a contract. I don't want to spend too much time trying to make the case on this one because there's not too many mouths to feed here. You've got Courtland Sutton playing the perimeter. Marvin Mims is a manufactured touch guy who I think is more of a dream and a fantasy than he is like an actual threat to Evan Engram in this offense. And if you just want easy underneath touches to Evan Engram or for Bo Nix to have instead of trying to push the ball downfield all the time, it's to Evan Engram underneath. People will look at how bad the Broncos were at utilizing the tight end last year. I think that just says more about the talent in the room. Last season, the Broncos targeted the tight end position only 72 times, caught only 51 passes for only 483 yards last year. Either of you want to name me the Denver Broncos tight ends last year?
I couldn't name you one.
So you have Adam Troutman.
Yep.
You have Lucas Kroll.
There's another one.
There was a third.
Yeah,
Greg Dulcich, but he only played a game.
For all of the 2 games, I'm pretty sure he played. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's a fourth. It's a Sean Payton guy, isn't it?
Well, I don't really care, but any of those guys, you think they want to give the football to?
No.
Dead serious. That's what you have to look. Look at no ball. Don't feed bad players. Let's not apply rocket science to shoot. This is first grade math at this point. Don't feed bad players the football. So Evan Engram is still a good football player in my opinion, and Sean Payton's a guy who's had an all-pro tight end. He's had an all-pro tight end. 3 different all-pro tight ends. Goodness, golly. What I was trying to say is, per Benjamin Albright, head coach with 4 all-pro seasons out of 3 different tight ends. That's what I was trying to spit out, and I couldn't get the numbers in the right order. So this is a guy who wants to utilize the tight end position. Evan Engram, he's being drafted as if he's going to have a bounce back. The community agrees on this one. Stop stuttering, Lucas. You 2 want to sprinkle anything on there?
Yeah, I'm at 143 targets in 2023. That's really all you need to know. He was injured last year. That's why it was so down. Right. He already had the 8.4 yards per reception, so he's utilized as that underneath safety blanket. Got to imagine he's going to be a lot of the same this year.
Tight end 3 and tight end exposure for me this year. So, yep, I'm all in.
We'll put a pin in it there. Let us know who you think is going to bounce back this year. I was really hoping one of you would talk about Jalen Waddle. I think he
was in strong consideration for me for receiver.
I'm surprised neither of you took him. So like again, a guy we easily missed who could have been, you all are going to be screaming in the comments, I know, but no, we agree with you on that. But any other bounce backs you think we missed, let us know down in the comments below. We'll be back later this week with, how about this? We'll spoil it at the end of the episode. 12 sleepers at each position in fantasy football this year. That's gonna be a pretty fun episode. We're gonna get really nasty with some of those names. Follow us on the socials in the meantime. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you want our short form content and want to just stick to YouTube exclusively, hey, we get that. Fantasy Football Fellas shorts over on YouTube. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlot FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Plath for Ty. We'll see you all later this week on Thursday. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know as soon as that episode is out. We'll see you then. Deuces.
Deuces.